All right, so welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep on Complete Dynamics,
Okay.
which is homeopathic software.
All right.
So imagine you're a homeopath, right? You've got all these cases, and you need software to kind of manage it all and repertorize and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And Complete Dynamics is one of the options out there.
Right.
And, they've got some interesting things about their business model.
Okay.
Like they have lifetime licenses, but they only do email support.
Interesting.
And they have this kind of quirky upgrade policy. So we're going to try to unpack all of that today.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing that's interesting is that we're pulling information from a couple different sources, right?
Yes.
We've got the original developer, which is in France. And then we've got the Indian reseller, which is Nambisons Softronix.
That's right.
I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, I think so.
So, yeah, we're going to try to piece all this together.
Exactly. So Nambisons is your point of contact if you're in India. But
Right.
when it comes to like the actual software itself and the details, you're really going straight to France. So one of the first things that I noticed that was really interesting was the licensing structure.
Oh, yeah.
So, they've got your typical like subscription options. Like you can subscribe for 6 months or 1 year or 3 years or 5 years.
Right. Pretty standard.
But then they have this lifetime license.
Okay. Now that's interesting.
Which, in this day and age, you don't really see that a lot.
No, not really, especially with software, yeah.
Yeah, right. Like everybody wants to get you on that subscription model.
Yeah, get that recurring revenue.
Exactly. So it makes you wonder, like, okay, what's the catch?
Yeah, what's the trade-off? What am I giving up for that lifetime?
So the catch is that the license is tied to your specific computer and Windows setup.
Okay.
So like if you upgrade your computer or you switch to a different operating system, you need a new license key.
Okay, so it's kind of like, it's not really a lifetime license in the sense that it's like eternally transferable.
Right.
It's more like lifetime ownership for that specific setup.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you buy a physical book.
Yeah.
You own that book forever. But if you want the digital version, you got to buy that separately.
Right. That makes sense.
Now, when it comes to support, that's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay. How sad.
So they give you either 1 year free support or 5 years of free support.
Okay.
Depending on your license. But after that, you have to pay.
So it's more like buying a TV,
Yeah.
You own it for life,
Right.
but don't expect the manufacturer to come fix it for free.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they really emphasize backups.
Okay.
Because they're basically saying, like, look, if something goes wrong and you're outside of your support window, you're on your own, buddy.
You're on your own, yeah.
And one thing they specifically say is to reinstall Windows using the original CD that came with your computer.
Really? Wow.
They say, like, if you use a different CD, it can actually change your license number.
What? Oh, wow. Okay.
So they're really, like, kind of operating in their own little world here.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And then the other thing is their upgrade policy.
Okay. What's unusual about that?
So upgrades are applied from the expiry date of your support.
Okay.
Not the date you purchase the upgrade.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of counterintuitive.
It is.
Why would they do that?
So they actually give 2 really detailed examples in their software policy document to try to explain this.
Okay.
And basically what they're trying to prevent is people from like strategically delaying upgrades to try to get extra time.
With that extra free support.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they want to make sure that, you're paying for the time that you're actually using the updated software.
So it's actually kind of clever what they're doing with this whole lifetime license thing.
Right.
They're locking in these loyal customers who really value stability, and those customers are probably more likely to pay for support down the line. It's a very different way of thinking about software.
It is. And it's interesting that they even provide a Hindi explanation of this policy.
Oh, really?
Which I think kind of hints at, maybe they have a significant user base in India.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So going back to that whole like lifetime license tied to a specific computer, what happens like if your computer crashes?
Right, or you have to reformat your hard drive or something.
They really, really emphasize reinstalling Windows using that original CD.
Huh, interesting.
And they even say like if you use a pirated version of Windows,
oh, wow,
it can change your license number.
And
then that can create problems, especially if you're outside of your free support period.
So they're really emphasizing using legitimate software.
Yes.
Which, from a security standpoint,
makes sense.
Absolutely.
But I do wonder, like, wouldn't that make it harder for them to, keep up with software updates? How do they innovate if people are just using the same version for years and years?
That's a great question, and it seems like they've definitely prioritized stability over constant updates.
Mm-hmm.
Now, speaking of support, let's talk about that a little bit, because their support system is, well, it's quite unconventional.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear more about that.
Definitely.
So their support system is definitely something that caught my eye, in this day and age, to only offer email support.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a bold choice.
It is. It really goes against the grain, right?
Yeah.
But they actually explain their rationale for this pretty clearly in their documentation.
Okay, so what are their main justifications for sticking with email?
Well, first of all, they claim that their software is super intuitive and easy to use. So basically they're saying, users shouldn't need a lot of hand-holding. That's a pretty confident statement.
It is.
But are they backing that up with resources for people who do need help?
Yes. So they have a very comprehensive FAQ section on their website that covers all sorts of topics, from basic installation to more complex functionality questions.
Gotcha.
And they also highlight that, email support creates a written record of all the communication, which can be helpful for future reference.
That's a good point, because, with phone support sometimes,
you
have to repeat yourself a million times.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah, so that is a plus.
And they also argue that offering phone support would just require more resources.
Yeah.
And that would ultimately drive up the cost of the software.
So they're kind of passing those savings on to the customer.
Exactly.
Okay, I see their point.
And let's be honest, who hasn't spent an eternity on hold?
Oh, yeah.
Listening to the worst elevator music while waiting for tech support.
Ugh. It's the worst.
So maybe email isn't so bad after all.
There's definitely a certain charm to it.
Right.
Like a throwback to a simpler time.
Exactly.
When communication was a little bit more, deliberate.
I like that.
And speaking of charm, some of the topics that they cover in their FAQs are actually pretty fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah, for example, they have a whole section on how they made the complete repertory and what sources they used and everything.
So it's a little peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, exactly. It's for any homeopathy enthusiast, it's really interesting stuff.
I'm kind of curious about that now.
Yeah.
I might have to check that out.
Yeah, and I'm also really intrigued by their browser edition.
Oh, yeah.
Which is they're offering the software.
And the repertory.
For
free.
For free. Yeah. So it makes you wonder, what's their strategy there?
Right. Why would you give away the crown jewels?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, and then they also have, FAQs about how to use complete dynamics on multiple computers. How to, transfer cases to your iPad or your Android device.
Oh, okay.
And even, instructions on how to repertorize in Hindi.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it suggests that they really have, a diverse user base.
Yeah.
And they've made an effort to make the software accessible to practitioners all over the world.
Absolutely. And just to reiterate, all of this support is free for registered users.
Within their support period.
Within their support period, exactly.
Right.
After that, they do offer paid support.
Okay.
So, if you need troubleshooting, assistance, whatever.
So circling back to what we were talking about earlier about user experience, it seems like Complete Dynamics is really presenting a very unique approach.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you've got this lifetime license, which offers stability, freedom from recurring costs. But on the other hand, you're tied to a specific computer setup.
Right.
You might have to pay for support after a few years.
Yep.
And, not everyone's going to be comfortable with that email-only support.
Definitely a trade-off.
Yeah, for sure.
Some people might really appreciate the comprehensive FAQs and the philosophy behind it. But other people might be like, no, I need that instant gratification.
Right. I need to be able to talk to somebody right now.
Exactly.
So it really does challenge the conventional software model.
It does.
Makes you wonder, do you think this approach could work for other types of software?
That's a great question.
Could we see lifetime licenses for word processors or design software?
Imagine that.
What would that do to the industry?
It would be pretty disruptive, right?
Yeah.
It would really challenge a lot of the assumptions about how we pay for and consume software.
Yeah. And it could even lead to more sustainable practices,
Interesting.
If companies are focused on building software that lasts,
Right.
Instead of constantly pushing new versions.
Yeah, instead of that planned obsolescence.
Exactly.
So it's a model worth exploring, for sure.
It really is. Maybe Complete Dynamics is onto something here.
Maybe they are, but let's not forget about the core functionality of the software itself.
Right, of course.
At the end of the day, it's designed to help homeopaths manage their cases and repertorize effectively.
Exactly. So let's actually dive into that aspect now.
Let's look at what the software actually does for practitioners and how it, streamlines their workflow. Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks here. What does Complete Dynamics actually do?
Right.
For homeopathic practitioners? We've talked a lot about their business model, all that stuff. But how does the software itself help homeopaths in their day-to-day practice?
Well, from the materials we've looked at, it seems like Complete Dynamics is really all about repertorization and case management.
Okay.
So essentially, it's like a digital toolkit to help homeopaths find the most appropriate remedies for their patients.
So it's kind of like a high-tech version of those giant repertory books that homeopaths have been using forever.
Yeah, instead of like flipping through pages and cross-referencing symptoms manually.
Right.
Complete Dynamics lets you input all the patient information, and it generates a list of potential remedies based on its database.
So that sounds like a pretty big time saver.
Oh, yeah, huge, especially for busy practitioners.
Right, like who has time to be flipping through these giant books all day long?
And it can also help reduce human error, right?
Oh, interesting.
Because it makes sure that all the relevant symptoms are taken into account.
Right.
When you're trying to choose a remedy.
And they even have instructions on how to repertorize in Hindi.
I know, it's pretty cool.
So that really speaks to their commitment to
that global audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're not just chasing the latest trends or whatever. They're trying to build a tool that can serve practitioners.
For years to come.
Yeah, for years to come.
Exactly.
It's almost like you're taking a more traditional approach. To software development, right? Focusing on quality and longevity.
Right,
rather than just constant updates and...
Yeah, and all the flashy features.
Flashy features, exactly.
Which makes you wonder, could this model work for other types of software?
Interesting.
Could we see lifetime licenses for word processors?
Imagine that.
Or, design software.
It would be pretty radical.
It would be.
Right.
It really challenges the way we think about paying for and using software.
Could a shift towards lifetime ownership lead to more sustainable practices?
Absolutely.
Could it lead to companies focusing on creating products that really last?
That's the hope, right?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question to think about.
It is.
Well, dear listener, I think we've given you...
I hope so.
...a pretty good deep dive here into the fascinating world of Complete Dynamics.
It's a fascinating company.
Yeah, they really are. They're very unique. We've talked about their unusual licensing structure.
Right.
Their commitment to long-term users.
Their dedication to homeopathy.
Absolutely.
Worldwide.
We've explored the pros and cons.
The trade-offs.
The potential impact of their, approach.
Now it's your turn. What do you think?
Yeah. Let us know.
Does this model resonate with you?
Could it work for other types of software?
The deep dive doesn't end here.
Keep thinking about it.
We encourage you to explore these ideas further.
Yeah, do your own research, form your own conclusions.
And if you're curious to learn more about Complete Dynamics,
check out their website.
They've got tons of information there about the software.
About their whole philosophy. Their perspective on technology.
And just remember, if you need to reach out to their support team,
reach out to the support at completedynamics.com.